Is the house I gave you already rented? My mother-in-law Dorothy's question cut through the Sunday lunch air like a sharp knife. The silence that followed was deafening. My wife Jennifer stopped chewing mid-bite, my brother-in-law Brad nearly choked on his wine, and my sister-in-law Lisa dropped her fork on her plate with a clang that echoed through the dining room. All eyes turned to me, sitting at the head of the table like a defendant awaiting the verdict. What house? The words came out of my mouth as a hoarse whisper. Dorothy frowned, her confused expression quickly turning into something much more serious. The 3-bedroom house on Maple Street I bought for you and Jennifer 2 years ago. $200,000 I transferred directly into your account. My name is Tony, I'm 32 years old, and at that precise moment I felt my world collapse. Because I had never, not even once, seen a penny of that money, let alone lived in any house on Maple Street. My mind raced through the last 2 years. Jennifer and I were still living in our cramped 2-bedroom apartment on the cheap side of town. I was still working 2 jobs, carpenter during the day and bartender 3 nights a week, to pay our basic bills. Jennifer still complained that we couldn't afford to go out to dinner or take trips like the perfect couple Brad and Lisa. Dorothy, Jennifer said quickly, her voice trembling, maybe we should talk about this in private. Nothing private, Dorothy interrupted, slamming her hand on the table and making the plates rattle. I want to know right now where my son-in-law's house is. That's when Brad spoke up, his voice low and tense. They used the money to pay off my investment debts. The world stopped. The air caught in my lungs as my brother-in-law's words echoed around the room. Investment debts. While I was working 60 hours a week, sleeping 4 hours a night, and Jennifer was complaining that I never had time for her, they were using $200,000 of my mother-in-law's money to cover Brad's losses on the stock market. Dorothy rose slowly. At 73, she was still an imposing presence when she was angry. $200,000, she said, each word cutting like broken glass. $200,000 that was supposed to give Tony and Jennifer a chance to start a family with dignity, instead of Tony killing himself working. Jennifer finally found her voice, though it trembled. Mom, Brad was in serious trouble. There were people coming after him for money. We had no choice. No choice. Dorothy's voice rose an octave. The choice was to tell me the truth instead of lying and letting Tony suffer. I looked at Jennifer, my wife of 5 years. The same woman I woke up at 5 in the morning every day to make coffee before she left for work. The same woman who complained that our apartment was too small, that we never went to fancy restaurants, that she deserved a better life. The same woman who knew, every single day, that I was working myself to death thinking we had no one to help us. Since when? I asked, my voice firmer than I felt. Since when have you known about Brad's debts? The silence that followed was more revealing than any answer. If you're following this explosive family revelation, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because what comes next will show how a lie can destroy not just a marriage, but an entire family. Because at that moment, looking at the guilty faces around me, a question began to form in my mind. If they lied to me about $200,000 for 2 years, what else had they lied about? The explosion that followed my question was like watching a building collapse in slow motion. Jennifer stood up so abruptly that she knocked over her glass of red wine, creating a scarlet stain that spread across the white tablecloth like fresh blood. Brad, why did you say that? She screamed, her voice broken with despair. Because I can't lie anymore, Brad replied, running his hands through his dark hair. Look at him, Jennifer. Look what we've done to our own brother-in-law. And that's exactly what everyone did. They looked at me. I sat there, 32 years old and weighing 145 pounds when I should have weighed at least 180. My blue work shirt, the same one I wore on weekends because it was one of the few I owned, hung on me like a scarecrow. The deep circles under my eyes told the story of months of sleeping 4 hours a night between 2 jobs. Dorothy approached me and touched my shoulder with a gentleness that almost made me break down. Tell me everything, Tony. From the beginning. So I told her. I told her about waking up at 5 in the morning to get to the construction site by 6, carrying wooden beams and drywall panels for 8 hours under the scorching Colorado sun. About rushing home, taking a quick shower, and getting to the bar at 6 in the evening to work until 2 in the morning serving drinks to drunk college kids. About coming home too, exhausted to even talk to Jennifer. Do you remember last week when you asked me if I was eating right? I asked Jennifer, my voice getting stronger. I said yes because I was ashamed to admit that I was eating instant noodles for dinner for the fourth time that week because I had no money left after paying the bills. My father-in-law tried to intervene. "Tony, son, if you had told us you were having a hard time." I did. The explosion came out of me with a force that surprised me. "I called you last October, crying, begging for help because I couldn't pay the rent. Do you know what you told me? Real men find a solution. Get a third job." The silence in the room was deafening. "And you, Jennifer," I continued, turning to my wife. "When I called you in December because my work boot was torn and I was working in the snow with wet socks every day, you said I was being dramatic and that I should learn to manage our money better." Dorothy slammed her fist on the table again, making the plates jump. "Meanwhile, you were getting $200,000 of my money. Money that was specifically for him." Brad finally found the courage to speak again. "It wasn't just the house money, Grandma Dorothy." My blood ran cold. "What else?" "Tony never had any problems with basic expenses," Jennifer said quickly. "We always." "Always what?" Brad interrupted her, looking at me with guilty eyes. "You always lied to him? Grandma Dorothy didn't just send the $200,000 to the house, Tony. She's been sending him $1,500 every month for 2 years to help with the young couple's expenses." The math hit me like a punch in the stomach. $1,500 a month for 2 years. $36,000. $236,000 in total, while I was literally starving, working myself sick, and sleeping on the living room floor because we couldn't afford a better bed. "Tony," Brad's voice trembled. "Do you remember that time you passed out at work on the construction site? When you said you had heat stroke?" I remembered it perfectly. It had been in July. I hadn't eaten anything in 18 hours because I had spent the last of our money on the overdue electric bill. "We were in Las Vegas," Brad whispered, "celebrating that I had won back $20,000 in poker. We spent $3,000 of your money on that trip." Each revelation was like being hit with a hammer. I got up from the chair with shaky legs and walked to the dining room window. Outside, the quiet suburban neighborhood looked normal, peaceful. Children played in the street, ordinary families with ordinary problems. "There's more," Brad said behind me. I closed my eyes tightly. "Brad, stop," Jennifer tried to silence him. "No, Jennifer. He deserves to know everything." Brad took a deep breath. "Tony, do you remember when you called on Christmas asking if you could come over for dinner and we said we were going out?" I turned to look at him. I remembered perfectly. I spent Christmas alone in our empty apartment, eating peanut butter sandwiches and watching reruns of old movies on television. We didn't go anywhere. We were here. But I lost a big bet and some dangerous people were looking for me. They came to our house. Jennifer and I thought it would be too risky for you to be here, so you left me alone on Christmas to protect the brother who caused the problem," I said in a strangely calm voice. "Interesting decision." Dorothy approached Jennifer and Brad, standing straight despite her 73 years. "You have 5 minutes to explain to me exactly where every penny of that money went. And if I find out you've lied about anything, you'll never see a penny of mine again." Jennifer looked at Brad, who nodded with tears in his eyes. "The betting started in Brad's senior year of college," Jennifer began haltingly. "Small things, online sports betting. When he graduated and got a job, the bets got bigger. The first year you and I were married," Brad continued, "I lost $40,000 in risky investments. We didn't tell the family because we thought it was just a bad phase." "That's when you first used Tony's money," Dorothy said, "and it wasn't a question. We were going to pay it back," Jennifer said desperately. "We thought Brad would learn his lesson, that he'd stop after a serious scare. But he kept gambling, and you kept using my money to pay his debts," she said, turning away from the window again. "For 2 years. While I worked 60 hours a week." The irony was too bitter. Brad, who had always been treated like the perfect son who never had to work a day in his life, was destroying his own life with gambling. While I, the forgotten brother-in-law, was killing myself working to survive. And our family decided to save the addict by letting the worker go without. "Tony," Jennifer said, her voice breaking, "we never wanted you to know. We thought we could work this out without involving you." "Without involving me?" I turned to her, feeling a cold anger spreading through my chest. "Jennifer, I was involved from the first day I went hungry to pay our bills. I was involved every time I worked sick because I couldn't afford to miss a day's pay. I was involved every time I cried alone in my room because I didn't understand why my own family wouldn't help me. Dorothy looked at us, each in turn, then turned to Brad. How many times have you been in treatment? 3 times, Brad replied in a low voice. The first was when Tony and Jennifer got married. The second was last year. Now I'm on my third, going to therapy twice a week. Paid for with your brother-in-law's money, Dorothy observed. The weight of it all began to suffocate me. 2 hours ago, I thought my family simply didn't care about me. Now I was discovering they cared enough to rob me of my future to save Brad. I need to get out of here, I announced, walking toward the door. Tony, wait, Jennifer tried to follow me. I didn't stop. At the door, I turned around one last time. You had 2 years to tell me the truth. 2 years of watching me struggle, suffer, and you never thought I deserved to know what was happening with the money Dorothy sent me. I grabbed my jacket and left, slamming the door behind me. Outside, the cool October air helped me breathe again as I walked through the familiar streets of my childhood. One question hammered in my head: if they lied to me about this, what else were they hiding from me? More importantly, how would I make them pay for every moment of unnecessary suffering they had caused me? I walked for 2 hours through the streets of the neighborhood where I grew up, my mind processing each revelation like a computer trying to decipher a complex code. $236,000. 2 words that completely changed my understanding of the last 2 years. Every stomach ache caused by hunger, every double shift that left me dizzy with exhaustion, every night I cried alone in my apartment thinking my family had forgotten me. It was all a lie. When I finally stopped, I was in front of the old park where Jennifer and I had our first date. Ironic. Even there, the memories now seemed tainted by the discovery that she had always known I was suffering unnecessarily. My phone vibrated. A message from Jennifer: Tony, please call me. I need to explain everything. I deleted it without responding. Another vibration. Dorothy, son, come home. We can work this out as a family. I deleted that one too. A third one. Brad, Tony, you have to understand that we did what we thought was best. 7 messages in 15 minutes. Now they wanted to talk. Where was this urgency to communicate when I was begging for help? I sat down on a bench by the park and called my best friend, Jake. Tony, man, are you okay? You sound weird. Jake, can you come pick me up? I'm at Elm Street Park. What the hell are you doing there? I thought you were having lunch with Jennifer's family. It's a long story. Can you come? I'm on my way. While waiting for Jake, the pieces continued to fall into place in my head. I remembered that Jennifer had visited me at work only twice in 2 years. On both occasions, she seemed nervous, distracted, always looking at her cell phone. At the time, I thought she was busy with her real estate work. Now I understood. She was dealing with the pressures of hiding $200,000 she had stolen. The irony was cruel. While I was carrying wooden beams to pay our bills, Jennifer was using my money to finance Brad's risky investments. While I slept 4 hours a night between 2 jobs, she was in Las Vegas casinos gambling away the money that should have given me the same decent life Dorothy had planned for me. Jake arrived in 40 minutes, driving his noisy blue Honda Civic. Get in, man. You look like you've seen a ghost. I got in the car and told him everything during the 45-minute drive back to my apartment. Jake drove in silence, letting out an occasional "man, I can't believe it" when he got to the most absurd parts. Let me get this straight, he said when we pulled up to my apartment building. Your family stole $236,000 from your mother-in-law that was specifically for you, spent it all paying off Brad's investment debts, and lied to you for 2 years while you nearly starved to death. Basically. And they only told you because your mother-in-law asked about the money in front of everyone. Exactly. Jake shook his head. Man, that's a crime. Literally a crime. We went up to my 3rd-floor apartment. The contrast was shocking after what I had just found out. Cheap furniture, an almost empty refrigerator, bills piled up on the coffee table. All this while $200,000 that was mine financed Jennifer's comfortable life and Brad's risky bets. Jake, I said, sitting down on my narrow bed. Do you think I'm an idiot for never suspecting anything? Man, you trusted your wife. That doesn't make you an idiot, it makes you human. He sat down in the computer chair. The question is, what are you going to do now? That was the question. For 2 hours of walking the streets, I had focused on the shock, the betrayal, the cruel math of $236,000. But Jake was right. The question now was what to do. I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to call the police. Another part just wants to cut them off forever. What about Dorothy? I remembered my mother-in-law's expression when the truth came out. 73 years old, but still intimidating when she was angry. She was more than angry. She was disappointed. And that was worse. My phone rang again. This time it was Dorothy. Answer it, Jake said. At least she didn't lie to you. Hello. Tony, where are you? Jennifer is here making a scene, saying you ran away and she's worried. I'm at my apartment. And I didn't run away, I just left before I said something I'd regret. Smart. There was a pause. Tony, I need to tell you some things. Things I found out after you left. My stomach tightened. There's more. A lot more. But I'm not going to tell you on the phone. Do you have any plans for tomorrow afternoon? I have to work at the construction site, but I can skip it. No, don't miss work because of this mess. They've already ruined enough of your life. Her voice was firm. Are you free Wednesday afternoon after 2? Perfect. I'll pick you up at your apartment at 2:30. We need to have a long talk. After she hung up, Jake looked at me expectantly. There's more, he said. I don't know what, but from the tone of Dorothy's voice, what we found out today is just the tip of the iceberg. I spent the entire night awake, staring at the ceiling of my bedroom and trying to imagine what other lies my family had told. If they had lied about $236,000 for 2 years, what else were they lying about? On Monday morning, I woke up with a strange clarity. As I got ready for another day of hauling beams at the construction site, I made a decision. I would no longer be the passive victim in this story. Jennifer chose Brad over me. She chose to lie instead of asking for honest help. She chose to make me suffer to protect her troubled brother. Now it was my turn to make choices. First decision, document everything. Every message, every phone call, every attempt they made to minimize or justify what they did. Second decision, find out exactly how much damage they caused. Not just financially, but academically, emotionally, physically. Third decision, decide how they would pay for it. Because one thing I knew for sure, they were going to pay. As I brushed my teeth, I looked at my reflection in the mirror. My thin face, the dark circles under my eyes, the appearance of someone much older than 32. 2 years of unnecessary suffering written on my skin. But behind the exhaustion, I saw something new. A cold determination that had never been there before. Jake was right about one thing, this was a crime. And criminals must face the consequences. On the construction site, for the first time in months, I didn't feel exhausted carrying the wooden beams. Every movement was fueled by a different energy. The energy of someone who finally understood that he was being cheated and had decided to do something about it. My supervisor, Carlos, noticed the difference. Tony, man, you seem different today. Less. I don't know, less broken. I'm fine, Carlos. Actually, for the first time in a long time, I'm really fine. During my lunch break, eating my peanut butter sandwich, ironically, the same thing I used to eat when I thought we had no money, I started making a list on my phone. A list of questions Dorothy would answer on Wednesday. A list of evidence I needed to collect. A list of people who could help me. And at the top of it all, a single question that hammered in my head. If Jennifer was willing to steal $236,000 from me, what other betrayals was she capable of? The answer to that question would come sooner than I imagined. Because on Wednesday at 2:30, when Dorothy told me much more about what she had discovered, I would finally understand that it wasn't just my money that had been stolen. It was my entire life. On Wednesday at 2:30 sharp, Dorothy was in the parking lot of my building driving her black Mercedes C-Class. At 73, she still drove with the precision of someone who had built an empire from scratch and never lost control of anything. Get in, Tony. We have a lot to discuss. As we left the city, a single question hammered in my head. If Jennifer had lied about $236,000 for 2 years, what other betrayals was she capable of? Dorothy drove in silence for the first 15 minutes, her hands steady on the wheel. Today, her posture radiated a cold determination that made me curious and nervous at the same time. "Where are we going?" I asked as we passed the sign marking the city limits. "Somewhere we can talk without interruption," she replied, her eyes fixed on the road. "Jennifer has tried to call me 17 times since Sunday. Her mother showed up at my house yesterday crying, begging me to understand their situation." My stomach tightened. "And did you understand?" Dorothy let out a bitter laugh. "Oh, I understood much better than they realize." We arrived at a small roadside restaurant about 30 miles outside of town. The kind of place where truck drivers stop to eat apple pie and drink strong coffee. Dorothy chose a table in the most secluded corner and ordered 2 cups of coffee. "Tony," she began, pulling a cardboard folder from under her arm. "What I'm about to show you will be hard to digest, but you deserve to know the whole truth." She opened the folder and took out a stack of bank statements. "After you left on Sunday, I called my accountant and asked him to review all the transfers I've made to Jennifer over the past 5 years. 5 years. My heart raced. The $236,000 we discovered on Sunday was just what I sent specifically marked house for Tony and Jennifer and young couple's expenses, she continued, sliding the papers across the table. But there were other transfers. Many others. I took the statements with trembling hands. The first page showed a transfer of $15,000 in December 2019, marked medical emergency, Jennifer. "What medical emergency?" I asked. According to Jennifer, she had complications after gynecological surgery and needed specialized treatment not covered by her health insurance. I turned the page. Another transfer in March 2020, $12,000 marked as urgent repairs to Tony and Jennifer's apartment. "Jennifer never had gynecological surgery," I said, remembering perfectly. "And our apartment never needed $12,000 worth of repairs." Page after page of transfers. $20,000 for problems with Tony's car, $15,000 for professional training course for Jennifer, $18,000 for equipment for Tony's construction work. The last entry made me choke. $40,000 transferred just 3 months earlier, marked down payment on a house, Tony and Jennifer. Down payment on a house? My voice came out as a whisper. Dorothy nodded gravely. "According to Jennifer, you had finally found your dream home and needed the down payment urgently." I quickly added up the numbers in my head. In addition to the $236,000 they had stolen from me, there was at least another $120,000 in fake emergencies. $356,000, Dorothy said, reading my thoughts. In 5 years. I leaned back in my chair, feeling as if I'd been punched in the stomach. "Dorothy, this is literally fraud." "I know." Her voice was calm, but there was something dangerous in her eyes. "And there's more." She pulled another set of papers from the folder. "I called some contacts I have in real estate. People I've known for decades. I asked about Jennifer, about how her real estate business was going. Jennifer worked as a real estate agent, always telling me about successful sales and generous commissions. Jennifer hasn't closed a single sale in the last 18 months, Dorothy said. The real estate agency fired her in October last year for poor performance. She's been working part-time at a department store in the mall ever since." The pieces fit together with painful clarity. It wasn't just Brad and his investment debts. Jennifer had also been lying about having a successful career, living off my money while I worked myself to death at 2 jobs. "Is there more?" I asked, not sure I wanted to know. Dorothy grabbed her phone and showed me a text conversation. "Jennifer sent this to me last night." I read the messages with growing disbelief. "Mom, Tony is being so dramatic about this whole situation. You know how sensitive he gets when he's stressed out from work. Brad really needs our help right now. He's making a lot of progress in therapy. Maybe we could talk about reducing Tony's allowance to $1,000 a month, just until Brad gets on his feet? Tony doesn't even need that much money. He's young and strong, he can work harder if he has to." I finished reading and handed the phone back, anger rising inside me like a fire fueled by gasoline. "She still wants to cut my money to give to Brad?" I said, my voice trembling with rage. "Not anymore," Dorothy said firmly. "Not a penny more." We spent the next hour making plans. Dorothy had already talked to her lawyer about the legal options. Although she could technically sue them for fraud, it would be difficult to prove that the money was specifically mine, since the transfers were made to Jennifer as an intermediary. But there are other ways to get justice, Dorothy said, her eyes shining with determination. And some of them will hurt a lot more than a trial. What do you have in mind? If you're following this story of family betrayal and want to find out how justice can take unexpected forms, be sure to subscribe to the channel, because the revenge that's being planned will surprise even you. First, Dorothy said, I need you to document everything. Every message they sent you, every phone call, every interaction since Sunday. If they try to minimize or deny what they did, I want evidence. I grabbed my phone and showed her the 42 unread messages from Jennifer and Brad since Sunday. I'm already doing that. Good. Second, I want you to tell me exactly how these 5 years have affected your health, your career prospects, your personal life. Everything. I spent the next 20 minutes recounting every detail. How I had lost weight until I was dangerously underweight. How my productivity on the construction site had declined because I was always exhausted. How I had missed out on promotions because I couldn't take training courses while working 60 hours a week. How my relationship with Jennifer had deteriorated because I never had the energy for anything but work and sleep. Dorothy wrote everything down in a notebook, her face growing darker with each detail I revealed. Third, she said when I finished, I want you to accept something I'm going to propose, even though it may seem excessive at first. What is it? I'm going to transfer $500,000 into an account I'll open specifically for you. This isn't charity. It's restitution. It's what you should have received from the beginning, with interest for the 5 years of suffering. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. In addition, she continued, I want you to stop working immediately. Focus only on regaining your health, taking the courses you've always wanted to take, rebuilding your life. Dorothy, I can't accept that much money. You can and you will. Her voice left no room for discussion. Tony, over the last 5 years I've given your family over $350,000 based on lies. $500,000 to you, based on the truth, is the least I can do. What about Jennifer? Dorothy put the papers back in the folder with precise movements. Jennifer and Brad have learned to live on stolen money for 5 years. Now they'll learn to live without it. But there's something more important, she said, looking me straight in the eye. I need you to tell me exactly what you intend to do with this information. The question hung in the air between us. For 3 days I had felt anger, betrayal, disbelief. But now, with the full extent of the lie revealed, I felt something different solidifying inside me. I want them to feel exactly what they made me feel, I said slowly. I want them to experience the despair of not knowing how they're going to pay the bills. I want them to feel the humiliation of having to beg for help and be rejected. Dorothy nodded approvingly. And Brad? I thought about my brother-in-law for a moment. Brad needs real help. Not money to continue investing recklessly, but real treatment. But it's not my responsibility to save him while I'm drowning. Perfect. Then here's what we'll do. Dorothy outlined a plan that was both simple and devastating. First, she would cut off all financial support to Jennifer. Second, she would make sure that the entire extended family knew exactly why she was withdrawing her support. Third, she would transfer all of the property and investments that Jennifer hoped to inherit to a foundation in my name. But most importantly, she said, looking me in the eye, you thrive. You recover, you succeed, and you are happy. The best revenge is living well. When we left the restaurant 2 hours later, I had a complete plan and the resources to execute it. More importantly, I had the support and approval of someone who really cared about me. Back in town, Dorothy made one last comment. Tony, Jennifer will try everything to get you to intercede on her behalf. She'll appeal to your guilt, to the love of marriage, to family responsibility. Are you prepared for that? I looked out the car window, watching the Colorado mountains rise majestically against the blue sky. For 5 years I had gazed at those same mountains as I drove to jobs that left me exhausted, wondering why my family didn't care enough to help me. Now I knew they cared enough to rob me. I'm ready, I said. And for the first time in years, I truly believed my own words. Because the war was just beginning. And this time, I had the right weapons to win. The first bomb went off on Monday morning. Dorothy called Jennifer and asked her to meet her at the bank to review some investments, as she said matter-of-factly. Meanwhile, for the first time in 5 years, I was in no hurry to get to work. The feeling was strange, almost unreal. At 2 in the afternoon, my phone rang. "It's done," Dorothy said simply. "I closed all the accounts, canceled all the automatic transfers." Jennifer turned pale when I showed her the statements. 2 hours later, my phone exploded. "Jennifer, Tony, your mother-in-law has gone crazy. You need to talk to her." "Brad, man," Dorothy cut everything. "We can't even pay the basic bills." I ignored them all. On Tuesday, Dorothy executed phase 2. She told the entire family exactly what they had done to me. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. "Aunt Carol, $356,000, Tony? How did you survive?" I explained briefly. When I finished, she was furious. "I'm going to talk to Jennifer. This is unforgivable." The story spread like wildfire. Each call from outraged relatives was another source of support Jennifer lost forever. The real explosion happened on Friday. Jennifer showed up at my apartment, desperate. "Tony, you have to stop this. We can't pay the rent without Dorothy." "How did your job at the department store go this week?" I asked calmly. She turned pale. "How did you find out?" "Jennifer, you lied about having a successful career while you were stealing from me. Dorothy found out you were fired from the real estate agency 18 months ago." "I can get the money," Jennifer said desperately. "I have some savings." "Savings?" I laughed bitterly. "You mean the $356,000 you stole from me?" The confrontation I had imagined came on Saturday. Dorothy called a meeting at her house to clear up the financial situation once and for all. I arrived carrying a briefcase with all the evidence. Jennifer and Brad looked years older. Brad avoided my gaze. "Well," Dorothy began, pulling documents out of the briefcase. "I've canceled all financial support. I've come today to formalize additional changes." She placed a document on the table. "This house is being transferred to Tony." Jennifer turned pale. "Mom, you can't do that." "I can and I am," Dorothy said firmly. "And there's more." Then she revealed the twist that even I hadn't expected. "Tony," Dorothy said, "there's something I found out yesterday that you need to know." She took out another set of papers. "Jennifer didn't just lie about her job. She opened 3 credit cards in your name over the last 2 years. My blood ran cold. "What?" $78,000 in debt you didn't know existed. All used to cover her personal expenses and more of Brad's debts. Jennifer stood up, trembling. "Tony, I was going to tell you." "When?" I shouted, finally losing my composure. "When the house was foreclosed. When they came to arrest me for debts I didn't incur." "There's more," Dorothy said, her voice dangerously calm. "Jennifer, tell your husband about the $40,000 loan you took out last week using the house as collateral." The silence that followed was deafening. "What loan?" I asked, my voice strangely calm. I thought we could work it out." Jennifer began to cry. Dorothy placed the last document on the table. "This is the loan agreement." Jennifer used false information about her income and put her house up as collateral. "The payment is due in 30 days. It was like watching a building collapse. Not only had they stolen $356,000 from me, but they had created a $118,000 debt in my name and put our house at risk." "Jennifer," I said, standing up slowly, "you have completely destroyed our financial life. Tony, we can work this out together." "Together?" I looked at her. "For 5 years you lied, stole, and made me work 60 hours a week thinking we were broke. Now I find out that not only did you spend my money, but you put me $118,000 in debt that I didn't even know existed." Dorothy approached me. "Tony, I've talked to my lawyers. We can have the loan canceled on the grounds of fraud and transfer all the debts to Jennifer. You won't be responsible for anything she did without your knowledge." "What about our house?" "It's already been transferred to you. Jennifer had no legal right to use it as collateral." Jennifer collapsed into a chair, sobbing. "Tony, we've been married for 5 years. And for 5 years you stole from me, lied to me, and secretly ran up debts." I took the keys Dorothy had given me. You have 30 days to move out of the house. Tony, please. The answer is no. I headed for the door. For years I begged you for help, and you told me to find a third job. Now you can beg someone else. I left the house and breathed the fresh air of someone who finally had control over his life. But as I walked to Dorothy's car, one last question hammered in my head. If Jennifer was capable of creating $118,000 in secret debt, what other time bombs were still hidden? The answer would come sooner than I imagined. And it would be the most devastating revelation of all. 6 months later, I was sitting in the office of the new architecture firm Dorothy helped me open, reviewing the final documents of my new life. The consequences for Jennifer hit like a tsunami. Without Dorothy's support, she had to file for personal bankruptcy when her creditors discovered the fraudulent debts. The $40,000 loan was canceled due to fraud, but the credit card debts remained in her name. Brad finally hit rock bottom. Without a steady income to finance his risky investments, he lost his apartment and had to move into a rented room. The last I heard, he was working part-time at a mechanic's shop, trying to save up for real treatment for his gambling addiction. Jennifer tried to call me 63 times in the first 2 weeks. I blocked her number after the 10th message asking for a second chance. How do you feel about all this? My new therapist, Dr. Martinez, asked me during one of our weekly sessions. Relieved, I replied honestly. For the first time in 5 years, I don't feel like I'm carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders. And it was true. With Dorothy's support, I had quit both jobs and devoted myself completely to rebuilding my career as an architect. My health had recovered, I had gained weight and muscle, and for the first time since I was 25, I looked like someone my age. Last week, Jennifer called me from an unknown number for the first time in months. Tony, your father is in the hospital. He had a nervous breakdown from financial stress. Could you help us with the medical bills? The irony was bitter. They had spent $356,000 on lies, and now they were asking for help with a real emergency. Jennifer, I said calmly, do you remember when I begged you for help because I was starving? You told me to find a third job. Tony, please. The answer is no. Good luck. I hung up and blocked the new number. Dorothy started visiting me every week, always with stories about how our extended family was reacting to the situation. Aunt Carol wants to know if you're coming to her summer barbecue, she told me during our Sunday lunch. I told her you're always welcome, but Jennifer isn't. We laughed together. At 73, Dorothy had become not only my financial benefactor, but my life mentor. Tony, she said, becoming serious, I want you to know that I'm proud of you. Not just for how you've handled this situation, but for the person you've become throughout this process. Thank you, Dorothy. For everything. You know what I'm most proud of? She asked, smiling. You could have used that money to get cruel revenge. You could have humiliated Jennifer publicly or ruined her life for the pleasure of it. But you simply withdrew the support she didn't deserve and let her face the natural consequences of her actions. She was right. I could have done much worse. I could have exposed all the lies publicly. I could have sued her for fraud. I could have made her life impossible. Instead, I simply stopped being her victim. Today, as I prepare to open my second branch office, I know exactly who I am and what I am worth. 5 years of working 60-hour weeks taught me resilience. Discovering Jennifer's betrayal taught me the difference between true love and manipulation. The real transformation happened inside me. I learned that I deserve to be treated with respect, that I'm not responsible for saving people who don't want to be saved, and that sometimes the family you choose is more important than the family you're born into. Dorothy, Dr. Martinez, my new business partner James, my clients who have become friends, these are the people who support me, respect me, and believe in my potential. Last week, I received a letter from Jennifer. It was the first real communication we'd had in months. Tony, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know I wasted opportunities you never had. I want you to know that I'm in therapy for the first time in my life. I'm not asking for money or forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I finally understand what I did to you, and I'm sorry. I kept the letter in a drawer. Maybe someday I'll respond. Maybe not. Forgiveness is something you give when you're ready, not when someone asks for it. If this story of overcoming adversity and justice touched your heart, Subscribe to our channel because we have dozens of stories about people who refused to accept injustice and fought to get their lives back. Today, 3 years after that Sunday lunch that changed everything, I am opening my second architecture office. Dorothy will be there in the audience, along with Dr. Martinez and James. Jennifer won't be there. Neither will Brad. And for the first time, it doesn't hurt. Because I've discovered that I don't need the approval of those who hurt me to validate my success. The best revenge, after all, was simply to live well.